really bad drag now. Right. Welcome to Spear Speaks. Monday the 14th of September. I've been saying this in my head so many times, but thanks very much, guys, for joining myself and Karen tonight for speaking about inside the endurance runner's head. So I just want to give a little bit of a brief introduction about you all, if that's okay, and please call me out if I do mess it up. So I was hastily looking through the power of 10 just before I came on here. So we've got Dave Andrews, who's in my top right-hand corner here, who, in his own words, he considers himself an average runner who puts in a lot of graft and nails down aspects that he can control. In the background to him, he's done the West Highland Way, which is 95 miles, and he did that in 17 hours, 37 minutes and 32 seconds. He's also done the Highland Fling, which is 53 miles, and that was done in 8 hours, 24 minutes and 50 seconds. And also Glen Ogle, 33 miles. So we're really looking to tap into his brain about that distance. That's that ultra endurance athlete that we're looking for from Dave. Next, we've got on my top left-hand side is Hamish, who, in his own words, Scottish hill runner, looking for a big day in the mountains with the aim of being competitive as possible on race day. And some of Hamish's numbers are the Snowdonia Trail Marathon, 3 hours and 35. His PP over the 10K is 32:37, and he's also competed in Ultra Trail in Scotland, where he came second in 3 hours 22:50. And he still has a slower marathon time than myself, which is delightful to be out there. And then the bottom right-hand side corner, we've got Robbie, who, in his own words, he said, "I'm a full-time mountain runner and part-time road runner. Jungfrau Marathon winner ×3, I believe, in the fastest time, 2 hours 59:30. He's also been London Marathon in 2 hours 14:56 in 2019. And it was one of the highlights for me was actually seeing him go in the opposite direction when I was still heading out. And then the last one here we've got is the Gold Coast, 2 hours 19:36 for bronze medal. I remember watching that TV, and again, very massive highlight for myself watching that. So thanks very much to the three of you for joining us this evening.
You forgot about me.
I asked one of my clients today how you describe Karen as a physiotherapist, and the client said you could probably describe us both the same. So you're a bit like gardeners, and you're not scared to get their hands dirty, to get rid of the weeds, to allow the flowers to grow. So, and like all good gardeners, you also speak to the flowers after you've taken the weeds out. So yeah, I think that was a good way of summing up Karen. So I didn't forget about you, Karen. It's just even the best till last.
I'm glad you didn't include my running credentials there, because I
I want to just jump straight in, if that's okay. We've been lucky enough to get lots of questions tonight, guys, and I know that we're a wee bit delayed in getting started, but I just wanted to jump straight in, and I'm going to open the question up first of all. In the endurance runner's toolbox, what are the top 3 things to have in it, and why are they important? So that's going to go to Hamish first of all.
I think the number one thing is consistency in training. You've got to plan for the event. So work within your means at like a consistent level. So make sure your training is consistent each week with your number of sessions, making sure those sessions are accurate to the event you're doing. So if you're doing something fast on the road, you need to be doing fast sessions. If you're doing something uphill, you need to be doing uphill sessions. You need to be getting those sessions in regularly along with your long run and getting that sort of focus week on week. I always find sticking to a similar mileage each week is quite good. I find even if you're high, but jump in sort of 50, 60, 50, 70, it becomes a bit here and there. But if you like stick, say, at a mileage you find works for yourself that's consistent, the training goes much better. What other things are in the toolbox? Planning for the event as well. So sort of your nutrition plan, what works for you in that sense as well, what gels you like, what energy drink you like. And always like knowing your weakness so you're prepared for it in the race so that you can hit that section of a long race strong and not just absolutely crumble. I think we'll probably all have been there at some point where you hit that part 10 miles from the end, you're just like, oh dear, I thought this might happen. So yeah, planning sort of your race, and I think that's why Dave Andrews is probably your best man for that proper structured plan of how to execute the race as well.
What would you add to that, Dave? What's the main tools in your toolbox? I know that you put a post up recently about your one notebook was pulled out again with your big checklist of pretty much everything, including the kitchen sink, to take with you to
No,
doing
as
that
well,
stuff.
mate.
What other things do you have in your toolbox yourself?
Just follow up with Hamish says. Apart from the running and all the obvious things, it is like nailing down the wee bits like the nutrition piece. So I'll prep like weeks, months before, trying out different things. I've got my go-to fuels which I normally use, but again, I've been reading some articles about you can take in more carbs. Is it up to about 120 grams of carbs per hour? I was told to have a look at that. So out training, trying to get up to like 5-6 gels an hour, just trying to process that and train on it to see if it works. So it's
I guess the training physically is part of it, but also training the body to get used to that amount of the gels and the carbohydrates and stuff. Robbie, was there anything you'd add in differently at all to the toolbox, or what's your main thoughts on there?
Well, I think just with running, you have to be aware of what your strengths and weaknesses are. So it's all good doing the training and things and planning, but you need to know, okay, I'm good at this part, I'm bad at that part, and really nurturing your strengths and also trying to build on your weaknesses, a bit like Hamish said as well. But just experience, years of doing the training. And I think for me, the biggest thing is just the consistency, just getting the miles in. If you're an endurance runner, you have to get out and run, a lot, plenty of miles, long runs, get strong, and then, you can add bits to that. But yeah, that's the main kind of thing in the toolbox.
And is there anything that you do now or that you used to do when you were younger that you've ditched? Is there a tool that you did have that as a more experienced runner that you've ditched?
The classic thing I did when I first started out, and I think a lot of runners do, especially when you get Strava and you go through the segments, is every single run you do is absolutely nails, and you just go as hard as you can. And if your pace isn't just like a few seconds quicker than it was for the same run the day before, you're like, that is a disaster. Whereas now I quite look forward to absolutely plodding through it like 7:40-minute miling, and it doesn't stress me. I know that's sort of recovering the legs for when I start running faster in the sessions.
We had that conversation, Dave, on, I think it was Sunday morning, and it was like, but people will look at the Strava, and we come up with an analogy between the two of us saying that, well, people look at an atlas and can see a country, but don't know anything about the country. So people will look at your Strava, but they won't know anything about what phase your training's in or what you're doing, what you're preparing for. So it's kind of knowing that the Strava entry is very much a small part of what the journey is, and it's a snapshot of what everyone else sees versus what you're actually aiming towards. And that might be one person's area for development, is ignoring the Strava, ignoring the picture that comes up once you've posted a run.
Yeah, I think the difficulty thing we were talking about on Sunday, James, I would be using Strava when I was doing my longer mileage weeks. So you almost get addicted to it and chasing people down to get that motivation to run more and get that in. But it's really difficult to turn off once you start doing that. Then it does become a bit obsessive in the wrong way.
No, excellent. The next question we had was, what is your favourite training session, and also what is the desired purpose of that session? And that goes to Dave first of all.
I like my longer runs now. The last year I didn't do any long runs. It was basically running 3 times a day, into work, out of work, and run at lunches. So my longest run would be like 15 miles ish. Now I'm getting up to like, was it 50, 60K on Saturdays? But it's not just a going out and jog. There's a tempo session in the middle of that, or there's some intervals. So instead of going out for these big long 5-hour jogs and just kind of trying to whittle through them, it's having them wee structured sections, so you can break it down into small chunks. I really enjoy doing that. Maybe not the night before, but once I'm out doing that, it's really, really good.
And Robbie, what's your favourite session, and what's the main purpose for that session?
Well, it depends what I'm training for exactly, but if I'm training on the road, I quite like a tempo run, just quite a, not absolutely flat out, but just a solid hard effort, because I think that's, you know, it's easy to get carried away and do a lot of like short reps that feel good and look good on Strava. Nice, you know, fast paces going up. But I think just doing a long, you know, between 10K and 10 miles, just sort of marathon pace, I think that's a really good workout, you know, for marathon training and even for shorter distances. And then if there's training for the hills, like you can't do this session so often here, but just continuous uphill reps. So you have a big long hill that takes you maybe 40 minutes to go up, and you just run, say, 5 minutes hard, 3 minutes easy, but you keep going up even in the recoveries. And then it just helps you kind of get used to that change of intensity and recovering while you're still working quite hard, you know, going uphill. And then you finish at the top of the hill, which is great. So
It was a good film. Get the chairlift down.
Yeah, exactly. Don't run down now.
Hamish, your favourite session and
yeah, I do quite a lot of what Robbie was saying there with like the continuous uphill reps. But I think my actual favourite session is, some of the boys call it the Hamish battle because it's so complicated. It's actually the James Taylor from Edinburgh. And it's like a really good sort of pre-race session I do like on a Thursday before a Saturday or Sunday race. There's 1 mile steady, minute recovery, and then you do 2 minutes, and then 150, and then 140. You decrease each rep by 10 seconds until you're down to 30 seconds. And you do the middle section at about 3 to 5K pace, minute recovery at the end of that, and then do another mile steady where you just sort of chilling, sort of, not even like half marathon pace, but it's like, well, probably about half marathon pace actually, but it feels quite comfortable at the time. And the whole session's only about sort of 3.5 to 4 miles of effort. So it's not too intense, but it's a really good sharpener just before a race, I find. So it's quite a complicated one to describe. It's a fun session to do.
Do you have to write it down on the inside of your arm and just keep on checking?
Never mind the arm, you'd need the leg as well.
No, great, and it's great to see like the different sessions, especially having the hill element there. For each of you being slightly different types of runners, having the longer runs with Dave with a little bit of tempo in the middle. Robbie, try to hit the uphills as much as you can, and with Hamish looking at the form and the sharpening element of his session. So it's really quite good to see the different sessions and why you enjoy them all. The next question I've had here is, what to date has been your favourite race, and can you give an insight on how you felt during it and what the emotions were when you went through it? And that goes to Robbie first of all, if that's okay. So what to date has been your favourite race, and can you give an insight to how you felt during it and also the emotions after it?
I think for me it's got to be Sierre-Zinal in Switzerland race. It's a point-to-point race, 31 kilometres where you run. Well, it's a mountain race. It's got a big long climb at the beginning that's about 20-25% gradient, and then once you get up to the top, there's quite a lot of more runnable trails, sort of undulating for about a half marathon distance with a steep descent at the end. And I like it because it has a bit of everything in it. You know, there's something for everybody there. But it's really tough. And to be honest, I must have run it 8 times or maybe even 9 times. So how I've felt has varied a lot from year to year. But on a good year, you know, the climb is just so tough, and you're just trying to keep you know, you can sort of walk/run, trying to conserve a bit of energy, and then on a good day you get to the top and it just flattens off, and you can just change gear and just go and accelerate, and then run sort of over the rolling trails for the next.
What do you think when you're going uphill, when it's that tough, and when it's at that part where you're having to think, do I walk, do I run? What's actually going through your head at that point?
Just try and keep the effort level as low as possible. I have a rough idea of what sort of effort I want to put in, but also where I want to be in the field. So if I drop too far back, then I won't catch anyone when it flattens off. But then if I'm leading the race there, then I know I've gone way too hard. But it's trying to just stay within striking distance of the leaders, but saving energy, you know, for later in the race. So you're kind of thinking, well, if I'm breathing way too hard, my legs are starting to burn, then I'm going too hard. So then you just ease off a bit and start walking. But it's that damn steep that I think it's like you could walk. If someone's walked the whole way up and then still managed to finish in like the top 5 or top 3, then, you know, accelerating after that. But I do like to run because mentally I find that when you're going up a really steep hill and it flattens off, if you're walking up that hill, when it's flat, I find that you just want to keep walking. Whereas if you're running up that steep hill, when it flattens off, then you find you can just accelerate. So yeah, that's my favorite race, and I like because it's a bit of a downhill finish, and it's, you know, you recover a little bit there, And I like point-to-point events too. It's a nice feeling. So.
And just to butt in a bit there, why the hills? Why hill running? Why what makes you want to go up rather than just flat?
Because it kills off the weaker. No, it's just there's something about it. I like the challenge. I like just the change in conditions and gradient. It's like when you go into a road race, it's like whoever's fastest is going to win, more or less, and you just settle into a pace. And I like the challenge of the hill and just kind of having to overcome that. And it's much more unpredictable. There's just more to it, which can be a bad thing, but at the same time, it makes it exciting. So. Yeah.
I guess it's the same kind of question that Karen's got there for Dave. Why multiple miles and multiple hours? Why do you do that?
I'm just not fast. I can't compete at any level up till about
To kill off the lesser one.
So the shorter stuff hurts. I'll be middle of the pack at best in any of this. I just took the longer stuff. It seemed not easier, but easier in a different way. So I fell into that.
It's quite interesting because both from that question, it's more of a mental battle with the elements rather than a race against your competitor, so to speak. It's more how strong can you be on the hill, how strong can you be going hour after hour after hour versus the person you're competing against. It's quite an interesting.
Well, I think with running, like what I've found in running is there's always somebody better. Like no matter what you do, there's always someone coming along. There's always a young person coming through. There's all these things that you can't control, but like within yourself, you can still make progress and work on things. And it's kind of the same with the Strava. Like, there's no point worrying about other folk. If you are making progress and you're happy with it, then I think that's what matters. And it's like that running up a hill or running an ultra. It's you in your own head and not kind of chasing other people around.
And Hamish, with yourself, what's your favourite race to date?
Yeah, my favourite race is probably Goatfell Hill Race. I've never actually run it particularly well, but the course is brilliant. It's like, it was the first time I ran it, I thought it was a 10k length course in total. It was only about 4 miles and I was still climbing. I realised it was 10 miles. And so again, planning.
That's great prep.
Definitely something to think about. But yeah, it's like an absolute sort of grind to the top. It's like just shy of 3,000 feet to climb. But then it just sort of gets rockier and rockier as you get to the top. And then straight back down the same way. But it's just like a really fast but sort of tricky, rocky descent. And I just think it's really fun. Just grind it as hard as you can right to the top. And then just let yourself get taken down the hill by gravity and try not to trip or slip. And then to throw in an extra little element, you actually have to run back into Brodick at the end. So you got 2 miles of fast running on the road. So you go onto the flats, so it's not over then, you're just working really hard. But I think the terrain on that race is brilliant. I really enjoy it.
I've got a question that it's been burning since about 2018, the Lara Gru. What was your emotions on the sunny day when you finished the Lara Gru that day?
Just wanted to cry. No, I wanted to win that day, and obviously the time I'd run the year before would have won it that year, but the better runners ran better than me, and I sort of just knew I'd absolutely ruined it, and I just felt totally broken. Looking back, I sort of can see how hard I did work, and I'm quite glad it didn't like totally capitulate to like 9-10 minute miling. I was still hanging on to like 7s through that rough patch, which to a degree on that course is all right. I mean, everyone keeps getting faster on it now. But now looking back at the race itself, how bad I felt, I'm quite glad how well I hung on. But yeah, I was quite disappointed then. And it was just a case of get to the finish and make sure I'm still on the podium. I think it might have been quite difficult if I dropped into 4th place. I would have probably changed things quite a lot, and it would have been working hard to stay motivated to keep going, but I hung on in there.
Which I guess leads on to the other question as well. What do you say to yourself? What's your mantra when you are hanging on in there? And that's open to all 3 of you. When you're at the well and you're actually thinking in your head, you're having the argument, do I keep going, do I stop? What do you tell yourself? What's going through your head at that specific moment?
Depends on the course I find. I did have a year with quite a few DNFs. Like at cross country, it's just going bad. It's like, are you getting any benefit from finishing this race? You're just going completely backwards. You got no energy. It's going wrong. So in my head, it's just like, why bother finishing? In a race like the Larry Grew, you've had 3 sort of months of commitment to the race, and you're like, you have to appreciate it. In those races, the long marathons, it can go wrong. Everyone's gone wrong at some point. So it's a bit like throwing the doll out the pram, really, isn't it? If you don't finish it, you just got to like pick your head up and be like, yeah, wasn't my day, and get on with it.
And Dave, there was a great question that came in, and it was, what was through your head at 1 hour, 8 hours, 16 hours, 20 hours, and 23 hours of a 24-hour race?
It's the same.
What's the mindset change, or what happens the longer and longer you go on? And
the way I kind of look at it, if it's a race and if it's loops, there's a lot of people, so it's just talking to people. So I try not to think too much. The kind of plan is 18 hours of jogging and talking, 2 hours of dying, and 4-hour marathon. That's the focus. But it's just trying not to think about them things and just continually lying to yourself. I'll go down to 100 meters on, 100 meters off, then that 100 meters on turns into 200, then into 300. So it's just continually lying to yourself for that 24 hours. Then at the end, it gets a bit competitive when you might be racing other people, hopefully.
Yeah, it's just that mental challenge. I know myself, I've been doing reps, and it's like, do you just do the last one, or do you just go now? Or it's so hard because you're having an internal monologue with yourself. It's like, how can you do it for 24 hours, or how can you do it over that certain distance? And I guess all three have touched on it's experience and consistency that really brings you there, knowing what your strengths and weaknesses are and preparing for that areas of weakness when they do come along. We've got some questions here from a few of the people that posted in, and we've got Will Stewart of Run For It in Aberdeen and also Scotland, I believe, who was asking about, he's really curious about the 3 approaches to daily diet and how each of you guys feel for the race, pre, post, and during. So that was probably the only clean question I could really ask from Will itself. So it was more asking about what your diet's like from day to day versus pre-race and post-race. Go to Dave first, if that's the case. I know you're quite meticulous about diet.
I seen his message and I thought he would be all right. And he messaged that mine and Hamish's day-to-day diet isn't probably too good, but I think from I'm an absolute pig. I've just no off switch with any food, chocolate, McDonald's, you name it. But a month, 2 months before a race, I can just kind of cut all that out. Get on the MyFitnessPal, just hit whatever calories I need to do to get down to race weight. I can be completely religious with it. But when I fall out of that, that's it. That's out the window. I can put on kilograms quite easily. Hence the high mileage to kind of try and stay in shape. But diet's all over the shop until I get closer to race day.
And Robbie, what's the night before your race? What's your go-to?
I would say normally I would like a pizza, basically. Not any really heavy toppings. A sort of Italian type pizza, thin. Nice and light, something like that, or some pasta. But going to Dave's diet, I think it'd probably be the opposite in terms of just having the more consistently always similar kind of diet, and hopefully weight not really changing that much and not really cutting anything out, but at the same time, not going overboard either. That's interesting to hear that. It's quite funny, because I think you get a lot of different diet approaches actually in running, but yeah, for me, it has to be consistent. I couldn't go, if I went one way or the other, I'd end up just eating all the bad stuff and being fat, and then I wouldn't be running.
And Hamish, for yourself, what's your post-race favourite go-to?
My favourite post-race, probably fridge milkshake. I got addicted to them one year, actually. Basically, after every run, I'd just nip into whatever shop I had and get one of them milkshakes. And I actually used a wheelbarrow to empty all the empty cartons out of my car. But they say chocolate milk's good after a session.
Yeah.
Have you,
guys.
Have you ever got pulled into any kind of faddy diets or things that, that people are telling you, oh, this is what you must have, or, you must try this or you must do that? Is there anything you've got pulled into that you've maybe regretted? Or
I did go like vegan for quite a while over a winter, just to try it out. Because I gave up meat like quite a while ago because I got like ill before a race, and it was something with meat that it just put me off meat for a long time. And then I thought, oh, I might as well just cut out. I don't drink milk either because I find like it really affects my stomach, like the lactose. So I thought it's not too big a step, so I'll just cut everything else out. And I don't know, I didn't really notice that much of a difference. Not any negative thing really, but it's just more convenient to be a bit flexible. I think once you start being trying to control too many things, it just becomes an absolute nightmare. You travel abroad to a race and you have too many dietary requirements, and then you end up, eating something out of a little plastic box the night before, whereas you've just got to take what you can and try and be open to new things as well. So yeah,
I tried the meal replacements a couple of times just to kind of to completely cut back, but yeah, not good.
Are you a grumpy bear when you're on your meal replacement?
I'm hungry all the time, and I'm hungry, I'm angry, so it's bad. I can continually eat all the time. But yeah, the meal replacement, they would fill you up for 1 or 2 hours, but didn't taste too smart. But it said they had everything in it for you, so I didn't have to think about any other foods. But like I say, I go into the mess of the canteen. I just can't go and have a wee bit of pizza and some chips. I'll just eat until there's none left. So not good.
the buffet king.
Bad, yeah, bad.
Another cracking question we had that came from Pete McIntosh. He asked, what's the secret to technical running? He recently completed the Lara Gru and claims his claim to fame was finishing 5 minutes in front of Robbie. He wants to know, how do you maintain such paces over the boulder field, and what type of training should he do to improve this aspect of his training?
Is that for me or is that for Hamish?
We might leave Dave out of this one.
Yeah.
So we'll go for Hamish and Robbie. What from both of you, what would be the key thing there for if you were training somebody to improve on the technical aspect of the boulder field? Having both ran it, what would your advice or top tips be for people?
I'd say find somewhere quite rough to train on. So when I did the Lara Gru twice, I did quite a lot of runs around Loch Canord. And if you've ever done the Loch Canord 10K, that's a really rough, rocky bit down by the loch. And essentially I'd go on that and I'd try and run it fast, and it's just picking your line through it. Just so like practice with your ankles really, because your stride's just different all the time through it, and you just find a section locally of really horrible terrain, I suppose, and you just get a bit better at sort of dancing over the rocks. But that's the boulder field slows everyone down. I think I was like 3 or 4 minutes off my average pace for the race through the boulder field every time I've done it. I don't know I haven't looked at Robbie's splits this year. He's maybe a bit quicker.
Probably not. I think I stopped to chat to Alan Smith on the boulder field for a bit. So
So I went halfway up Ben McDooey then.
Yeah, well, I was tempted actually, because after I'd gone the wrong way once, I was like looking at those hills and I thought, I could just add in some of them and just make a nice long day of it, and then it'll be fine. But now, in terms of, I would say, yeah, like for running on the technical, I would say, yeah, you have to practice it. But sometimes even just getting used to walking on terrain like that, getting on some rough kind of rocky paths, because if you go into it running, sometimes if you're not used to that, like you might end up just twisting your ankle and things. And it takes a while to build up that agility, coordination, and balance that you kind of need. So if you want to do some balance work, obviously, physios are probably more qualified to talk about that than me, but certainly improving your balance and proprioception is a really good way of being more sure-footed crossing the boulders. So if you do some of that as well as kind of physically getting out there, but I wouldn't just throw yourself into, running down a big cliff face and hoping for the best, even just walking on it. And it's kind of, as well as just running on it, it's getting used to that change in rhythm. I think a lot of road runners get used to running at that rhythm and just holding that intensity. But when you run on terrain like that, it's like you're going fast, you're going slow, you're changing direction. So even replicating that in training, like doing intervals over kind of rougher terrain or undulating surfaces to get used to the change in change in rhythm, I think would be a good way to start.
It's funny when listening to you speak about that, because it takes us back to our kind of physio principles, which is if you're going to do any new activity, you gradually increase the load. So, you know, you do small amounts to begin with and gradually build things up so your body gets used to it. And if you want to get good at a movement, then you practice it. So it's just, you know, it's what you're saying. It's just the principles that we use for basically everything. You're almost picking that up and taking that into running, but it's exactly the same thing. Build up the load, build it up gradually, and then make sure you train the movement that you want to get good at.
Yeah, and it's mental as well. I think the mental load of just looking at the terrain and thinking I can run over it. Whereas if you were to start off with the worst thing you could run over, then you would just be like, nah, I'm not running that, and you'd stop. Whereas if you start off with something gradual, you know, a few rocks and pick your way through it, then you can build up, and then you look at the technical path and it doesn't seem so bad. You know, it's a gradual transition to that, I think.
Building that deep, like, is it a bit like mountain biking where you're looking maybe 4 or 5 meters in front and preempting, or are you looking straight down at your feet? What do you find is the best kind of approach for that? Because I know that if you look at your wheel in mountain biking, you're going to hit every rock or hit the thing you're trying to avoid. Whereas if you are able to see 4 or 5 meters in front and kind of change your view, does that kind of work the same for the terrain running?
Yeah, I would say so. Like, definitely, the further ahead you can plan, the better. And you subconsciously do that. Like, I don't really realize, but I know exactly where my feet are going to go for the next 5 meters. Just looking at the rocks, it's like I know exactly where they're going to go. So then I just run over it. But I think if you look too close to your feet, you don't really have time to compute further ahead. So a good runner will know they just need to look even further ahead. You know, guys better than me, and they'll just trot over it. You know, but it's just that planning where your feet are going to go, looking at a rock and be like, is it going to roll over or is it going to be all right? And then, you know, just doing all that in your head, finding the best way through it.
That must take a lot of mental concentration.
Yeah, I think so. Like Lara Gru found quite tiring because of that, because there's a lot of it, of just, you know, picking your way through and just looking at the ground and being like, oh, okay, there's a massive puddle of muddy peat there, so I'm going to like hop on that stone and jump over, and you're just doing that the whole time. But that's what makes it fun. So it's better than pounding the tarmac.
Yeah, definitely the like downhill running as well, sort of really planning the route ahead, just so you can like nail it. But you just, again, downhill makes it a bit more tricky, because if you do fall, the consequences are a bit higher as well if you got more speed going. But you do definitely notice, I find, when it levels off or the terrain becomes a bit smoother, you realize how much you have concentrated downhill running and sort of the planning phase, and you just like, whoa, always get taken aback a bit and then sort of refocus to get the stride sort of rhythm again after that.
It's quite interesting, because the next question was from Karen Much, who asked, how do I gain confidence in going downhill? She gets scared and tenses up. I always remember we did a hill run with Run For It to try on the shoes of I think it was the Evo Jaws, correct me if I'm wrong, Hamish. And I remember you saying to my nephew Jordan, just saying, speed your friend, just go for it. And I can remember him going down the back of Scotland thinking, speed might be your friend, but I've got to drive you to the bloody hospital if you go over your ankle. So, although speed being your friend, what kind of advice would you give to somebody who's scared and tenses up a wee bit on the downhills? I know you mentioned it briefly there.
I'd say, yeah, obviously just nailed it straight away isn't going to be the best thing, because if you don't have the confidence. But I think it's just, again, just practicing. So again, go down them slowly, even like walk, as Robbie was saying earlier, with the rougher terrain, and just sort of figure out sort of that route planning as you go in, and you'll start like noticing what's going to be a good fitting, what's going to slip, what's going to move, what's not, and you become to like dance down the hill a little bit. One thing, if the routes, the hills are quite runnable, I've always found there's like a point where you stop putting the brakes on if you run fast enough, and you actually start like pushing yourself down the hill. So it kind of feels scary to go from that moment where you almost overtake the gravity push down the hill and you really start going for it. But I actually find at that point you feel more in control than when you're going down with the brakes on the whole way. So there is a point I find where the faster you go, the easier it becomes. But initially, you don't really want to commit to that. So I'd say just like practice routes, practice like gentle descents, with tricky bumps. And like Benny Maiden's Causeway is a great one. There's not too steep, but plenty of rocks to sort of dance around. But yeah, it's just practice again.
There's a cracking question come in for Dave. It was, what is the most vivid hallucination you've experienced during a 24-hour race? I remember listening to a podcast with Joe Rogan and Courtney DeWalter, and she described some of the hallucinations that she had during the length of time she was running. Has that ever happened to yourself, and what do you feel?
I've done Glenmore probably 3 times in the dark with a head torch on. Sometimes you can see shadows, but no, I never had any hallucinations when running.
When running. Just going through the question. Karen, you had a great question as well. Have you got that question there?
I wrote it down and sent it to you.
I think most people are well aware that as a physio we treat injuries, but as you both know, our role is deeper than that. It's about trying to figure out the course so we can try and prevent reoccurrences, and to look at warm-up practices and recovery to ensure you're keeping your body in the best shape so you can keep as much as possible to plan A. What is the best piece of physio advice you've received that has the biggest impact on injury prevention? And that goes to Dave first of all. So what is the best piece of physio advice you've received that has the biggest impact on injury prevention?
I don't know.
That's the wrong answer.
I don't. I've been to see you so many times about took loads of stuff, but it hasn't been for injury prevention. It's almost been too late that I've been to see you with niggles or injuries. But yeah,
Any lessons
advertising part.
No, you fixed me, but it's yeah. No, I wouldn't be able to answer that there. And you go through all the stretch and stuff. There's all the exercise you give us, but a month after I'm kind of fixed, that's me back into no stretching, straight into doing what I normally do. So
I think that's probably part of. I mean, Karen, you can help me out with this. That's part of our job as well, to listen to what athletes normally do and try and get them back to that as soon as possible. We work as a detour. We can help you while you're not at where you need to be, and hopefully we try and get you back to where you were before with a little bit more of education and advice, and maybe a couple more tools in the toolbox. Dave.
Yeah.
That he just doesn't realise he has, James.
Yes. Same question again to Robbie. What is the best piece of physio advice you've received that has the biggest impact on injury prevention?
Well, I'm glad to say I can answer that question. Many things. So
teeing James up here.
Yeah. So there's two. I think there's 2 things really. One, feet, mobilizing feet, loosening off things, pulling apart various bits, because the problem is your feet tend to stiffen up a lot. My feet do, especially in shoes, narrow shoes and things. And if they're bad, then everything else is bad. So really getting the feet moving and warmed up and loosened off. That's one thing. The other thing would be glutes. Get the glutes firing before runs. Like, that just seems to fix everything. Before I was doing that, I was getting pains in various places, and just I couldn't believe the difference, how quickly everything improved. Calf pains, Achilles, knees, all that stuff, lower back. So glutes, that's been another thing. But yeah, the feet as well, like certainly like calf issues too, things like that. Achilles, that's always improved through doing that. So yeah, I've got like a routine I do before every run. It takes me about half an hour before I get out the door. If I don't do that, there's no point in running, because I'll just be doing myself damage. So yeah.
Did you script that for him, James?
You could have asked him first then, and not me.
Scripted, Dave. I've been saying
so much.
all week. Like,
Spent so much time in physio, I've learned all that. Spent half my life there. So.
And again, Hamish, for yourself, I know that you had a wee bit of ankle issues previously as well. What's the best piece of physio advice you've received that has been the biggest impact on injury prevention for yourself?
Mostly more recovery, actually. It's something you said, I think it was like last November when I came with like glute injury, and I was asking about bike, because I'm quite bad when I get injured for just going out and nailing the bike, because obviously taking the load off a little bit. And you said, remember you're a runner first. So that sort of made me think a lot more about when I feel sort of either injury coming on or I have an injury, about sort of managing the running load to be appropriate for that injury without just like dropping the running and hitting like 200 miles on the bike that week instead, which is a dysfunctional for running. So yeah, it's like remember what your primary goal is as a sport.
No, perfect. No, great. I've only got one last question, guys, here, and it was, what are your mantras? I'm quite big on having positive approaches to a lot of things, and it's just to go through what your main mantra is when you're to do with your endurance running itself, just to finish off, and that goes to Hamish first.
What's my mantra? I think find something you enjoy. Like that's why I do the hill running. It's I enjoy hill running over road running. Just the mix of terrain is a lot more fun. Obviously, working Run For It, you see a lot of people saying, "Oh, I'm going to do a marathon," but you get the sense that they're only doing a marathon because everyone says you have to do a marathon. It's like, well, do the distance, do the terrain that you enjoy. So for me, it's about running the terrain you enjoy, and I love being in the hills, so that's where I go.
Excellent. And Dave?
There's probably two distinct names. Shut up legs. I can repeat that for hours, because just shut up, or head off, legs on. Just repeating, yeah. And another one, this is when you give us, sorry, I'll go back about 3 years ago, it was head up, shoulders back, because when I was on the treadmill, you said it was hunching over. So we'll do that, head up, shoulders back, and breathe. So
You have taken something on.
Brilliant advice, James. Thank you.
There you go. It's the delay. It's the delay in the camera.
The accent.
And Robbie, last one for yourself. Finish off. What's your racing mantra, your endurance running mantra?
To be honest, when I'm racing, I don't really use my brain at all. I just think I need to get to the finish as quick as possible. That's the goal. Everything else just goes out. I don't even think, just run. And yeah, that's about it. Try and run fast, ideally. Try to avoid slowing down as much as possible and just keep going. I never got round to thinking up anything to help me keep going. Just, never got round to it. I need to get one. I think for ultra running, you need it, especially doing laps. Then you need something, but I've never done a race like that. It's always just been like, oh, there's something in the horizon I can look at. Oh, that's nice. And then go around the next corner.
Look for something else. No, guys, I can't thank you enough for joining us this evening. I do apologise for the technical difficulty at the start. But on behalf of myself and Karen, just like to thank you for giving up your time this evening and giving us some really good gems. Then I'm going to have to watch it back, because there's a lot of information there from all three of you, and it's an absolute honour for myself to be questioning or asking you these questions, but also to get first-hand chance to ask these questions as well. So really do appreciate you giving up your evenings tonight, and I wish you all your best in your running this next season. Hopefully we get some more races on and we can start doing some things. So really thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you for
Really
having us.
Yeah, thanks for us.
Cheers. No, thanks. It's been good. It's been fun.
Yeah, thanks guys. I really appreciate it. I'm just going to hit stop recording.